Good morning. I'm Arlen Rasmussen, and I have the pleasure of chairing this meeting, and it'll be my, excuse me, it'll be my last meeting. I'm going to retire again, December 3rd. So we have, this is a day of celebration. No more political ads. Yeah. We can go back to those standard old ads that we're so sick of, but now we miss, And we got the Penguin Walk. Everybody do the Penguin Walk out there with the new ice and, getting ready for winter again every year. It just seems like this sheet of ice has to come before anything else. See, we're going to go around the table. I'm going to ask you to introduce yourselves and so forth. But before we do that, we have a couple of new people, and at least one of them is here. Michael Olson. Michael, welcome. He is new to our board, so welcome, and we'd like to hear about you and what you've been doing.
Well, thanks, Arlen. I hope your retirement isn't tied to my joining the commission. I'll point that out. I'm mostly retired these days. I'm doing a little communications, crisis communications, public relations consulting on the side. That's been my bailiwick all these years. I was raised in Fargo, so I love the city. Moved back with my family in '95. I'd been in Washington, D.C., doing the political thing for several years, then Minneapolis for a number of years with my family. Our kids were, two of our kids were born in D.C. And then I was head of corporate communications for National Car Rental, which was based in the Twin Cities at the time. And then I ended up at a large PR firm and came home to visit my mother, who still lived, was alive and lived in Fargo. And I went to a small company at the time, Great Plains Software. I thought they could use some PR help, and a guy named Doug Burgum reversed the tables on me, and I ended up moving back to Fargo with my family, and I headed corporate communications there for quite a few years till we sold Microsoft, and then I consulted, and I ended up heading corporate communications at Otter Tail Corporation, and now I'm just me.
Oh. Well, welcome.
Thank you. That's more than you needed to know.
Well, thanks, and we appreciate you being here and being part of this board.
Thank you so much.
Sincerely appreciate that. Let's go around. Again, welcome everybody. We do have one other new member, Rory, but he isn't here. But if he comes, we'll get him introduced. First of all, on the agenda is approve order and contents of the overall agenda. This is an action item, and so I need a motion on this.
So moved.
Motion has been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Discussion. Discussion. And Michael, just so you know, I always ask 3 times. So it's not stuttering, it's just discussion.
It's good to know.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. What we have is a review and action on minutes from the September 12th, 2018 meeting also. And that's an action item. Motion?
I make motion.
Motion been made. Second?
Second.
Second. Discussion. Any discussion? Third and last time discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Commission check-in, and I think we'll go to Sarah right off the bat.
Sure. Topical for what we're discussing today with food waste. I participated in a waste sort, the 3rd waste sort in Clay County, this past Thursday, and so we went through 100 households worth of trash, and so we're identifying organics, recycling that's still in there, household hazardous waste, and other things. So it's a fascinating experience. And we had a few new members participate in that community through the solid waste. They offered a kind of similar to the Master Gardeners program, a Master Recycling and Composting class. So I participated in the first one of that, and I think that's something they're going to look at offering as well. So there's definitely ties to the food world within our waste world. So.
Okay, thank you. Kim?
The only thing I wanted to mention is FargoCast Public Health is going to be having a Heart and Soul Cafe on November 20th from 11 to 1:30. So everybody's welcome, and please join us. Chris Olson is going to be the chef for this one.
Nothing to report.
Okay.
Jim Osnes from Dover City Council. Nothing new.
I'm Margie Bailey, and I'm representing the North Dakota Culinary Institute project. And I'm also helping Verna Cragness out on the Northern Plains Sustainable Agriculture Society's meeting, which is in here in January. And as a part of that, and sort of to introduce the whole community to that, we attempted to book the film Wasted, which we accomplished. And so I'm really excited about this. We're going to screen this at the Fargo Theater, the film Wasted, and this is produced by Anthony Bourdain, and it stars Dan Barber and a bunch of other really important chefs. And they're all talking about food waste and how it can be translated. That is the cutest baby. Gosh.
Campaign
Anyway, hopefully by the time she grows up, this will be just an automatic part of our society. Anyway, so the film screens at 2 o'clock on Sunday afternoon, January 13th. We're really excited about it. Everybody who's seen it just raves about the film. So hopefully this can be the beginning of several films that I have in mind that have to do with food. One of them was in the Fargo Film Festival about four years ago called Just Eat It, which sounds a little demanding, but anyway. So this is just a hold the date kind of a thing. It's not very professionally done, but anyhow, we'll get this on your calendars, and it will be exactly 2 weeks before the conference starts, so it will hopefully generate some community dialogue about Dan Barber and what he's doing and what people are doing all over the country. And Dan will be here as a featured speaker for the conference the 24th to the 26th of January. So,
Thank you very much,
Yeah.
Maggie.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
Mike Thorstedt from West Fargo, and nothing to report.
Chelsea Johnson, Horace City Council, nothing new.
Rudy Satis, NDSU Extension, Cass County, nothing to report.
Luke Champa, MetroCog. I have nothing.
Deb Haugen, Cass Clay Food Partners, and I'm also part of Growing Together, and we will be having our potluck on December the 13th at Olivet in the evening. So if anyone's interested in finding out more about our community gardening and possibly looking at joining us next year, we would invite you to attend.
Thank you. Adam?
Adam Altenberg, Fargo Moorhead Metropolitan Council of Governments. Nothing to report.
Michael Olson, when I was 13, I think there was, no, I'm done. No.
Nancy Careview, at-large member from Dilworth, and I also work for Great Plains Food Bank. I do have an announcement to make. We are going to be presenting. We did a hunger study in North Dakota. It used to be done by Feeding America every few years, and they decided they weren't able to do it this year, so we took that up as an undertaking for about a little over a year. We were conducting a hunger study in every single county of North Dakota, and then also Clay County is included in that as well. And what we did was we surveyed clients as well as food pantries to see what hunger looks like and what the face of hunger is in North Dakota, and we have our results now. And tomorrow at Essentia, South University Essentia, at, let's see, what time is it? 3:30 to 5, we're going to be doing a community conversation about what that looks like, and we will have Cass and Clay statistics specifically. This one here is all of North Dakota and Clay County, but we'll have specific to Cass and Clay County that we'll have available for that conversation tomorrow, so we invite anyone to come to that as well. And I'll pass these out so you can all have them. If I know a few people around the table already have it, but take what you would like one.
Thank you.
Yep.
Megan?
Megan Myrdal, NDSU Extension in Cass County. Just a few things. On October 16th, we hosted a Hunger and Health Summit with a bunch of community partners. And this summit was to re-energize the Cass Clay Hunger Coalition. For those who have been in the community for a while, the Hunger Coalition used to be a really active group in the community and kind of lost steam for a few years, and now it is re-emerging. And we are going to be starting regularly meeting in December, the first Tuesday of the month at 8 a.m. at Fargo Cass Public Health. So the first meeting is Tuesday, December 4th. And this will just be starting to get some of our hunger agencies and advocates together to start working on strategies to address hunger in the community. So mark your calendars for that. We did some work to tally all the results of local efforts that were trying to capture excess local produce in the community. So Veggies for the Pantry, Glean ND, the Red River Market, and Growing Together. And this year during the growing season, 21,094 pounds of excess food from these locations and agencies was captured and channeled into our charitable feeding network. So just wanted to draw to attention to that there's a lot of good work happening in the community to capture excess food. And then lastly, NDSU Extension has these beautiful Field to Fork calendars for 2019. So there's a stack of them on the back table. They have recipes, and then they also have some more information that directs you to NDSU Extension's Field to Fork website that has webinars and food safety information and just a lot of good resources. So feel free to grab one on your way out.
I believe there's a survey link we're asking them to do in there.
And there is a survey on page 1, so if you would fill that out as well, we would be so appreciative. Thank you, Rita.
Wow, right on cue. Rory, welcome.
I'm Rory Beal, representing Clay County Public Health, and I'm excited to join this group. I had a little experience in a past life when I worked at the Dakota Medical Foundation leading a community healthy living initiative, and I've been leading an initiative in serving Cass and Clay focusing on mental health for the last 3 years, and I'm excited to be in a new role and allowing me to kind of get back into this world because I see it as very important.
Thank you for joining us. Appreciate it.
Jenny Mojo, Clay County. This is Greeley. She was a strawberry for Halloween, so she's a local foodie and trained. I don't have any report at this time.
Okay.
Nikki Johnson, University of Minnesota Extension and NDSU Extension, and no updates.
Noelle Harden, just University of Minnesota Extension. And I'm really excited to share some good news for all of us that our work with Cass Clay Food Partners was just recently published in a national academic journal, the Journal of Agriculture, Food Systems, and Community Development. Dr. Abby Gold, who used to serve on this commission, and I co-authored a paper called Navigating Borders, the Evolution of Cass Clay Food Partners. So I just made a couple copies to pass around. There's a couple more hard copies in the back, but we'll make sure that this gets distributed. We have like a formal media release and all of that we can make sure that everybody gets. But kudos to all of us and our work, and it's great that we're getting some national attention for it.
Congratulations.
Is that something when the media release comes out, you can send to our administrators at our entities?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, thank you, everybody. We are down to item number 3, food waste snapshot, and Megan.
I'm going to go over to the podium.
Okay, great.
All right. Hello again, everyone. So I am going to walk us through a little bit of information related to food waste. For those who were here in September, we reviewed a community snapshot, which is attachment 2A in your packet. And Brianna Erickson, who was a Concordia dietetic intern, she walked us through some of the information related to what's already happening on the food waste front in our community. And so this month, I'd just like to spend a little bit of time highlighting some statistics and why the food waste issue is important and relevant in our community, and then also dive into some strategies that we've seen in other city and county level municipalities and what they're doing to address food waste and what we could potentially do as a food commission. So as we heard in September, food waste is a serious issue. Reports estimate that 25, possibly up to 40% of all food goes to waste in the United States each year. And it's important to note that when we look at the food waste statistic, it's not just the actual food that's going to waste, but all the inputs that go into creating that food, which includes 21% of all the fresh water, 19% of all fertilizer, 18% of cropland, and further, this food waste represents 21% of the trash that comprises our municipal landfills. So if we look at where food waste happens along the food supply chain, we can see here that in the United States, the majority of food waste occurs downstream at the consumer-facing businesses and directly in our homes. So this graphic that's up on the screen shows on the left that at the farm level, about 16% of food waste happens there. And these are due to things that are largely outside of the farmer's control related to pests, disease, and weather-related issues. The next little icon there you can see, that is at the manufacturing level, so that's our food processing and packaging. Only 2% of waste is happening at that area. And then as we move down to the right, the third graphic there, that represents the business retail level, so that's our restaurants, our grocery stores, and our other food retail establishments. 25 million tons, or 40% of food waste, is happening in those establishments. And then lastly, down on the far right, is directly in the consumer's home, 27 million tons, or 43% of food waste. So therefore, you can see that over 80% of the food waste that we see in this country is happening largely towards the end of our food supply chain. So a lot of food waste experts have started to suggest that some of the most impactful strategies that we can do to address food waste need to be happening at those levels. So finally, just one more statistic to really drive this home. Food waste represents a significant financial burden too. Every year, American consumers, businesses, and farms spend $218 billion, or 1.3% of our gross domestic product, growing, processing, transporting, and disposing of food that is never eaten. So that represents $218 billion total, or $144 billion directly at the consumer level. And if we were to break that down to what that represents to individuals, a USDA study found that for each individual consumer, that number represents $544 each year. And it's interesting, in my work with NDSU Extension and then also helping to found Ugly Food of the North, I do a lot of individual education, speaking with college groups and high school groups, and there really is a disconnect between throwing away food and throwing away money. So a lot of work to try to educate folks that when you're throwing food in the garbage, you are actually throwing away dollars. All right, so let's talk a little bit about some of the solutions that exist from a local government perspective. So there's a number of strategies that have been laid forward for local governments to pursue that incentivize prevention, encourage recovering and recycling of food waste, and then also address food insecurity. So some of the solutions that I'm going to share today are from an organization called ReFed. This is a collaboration of 50 businesses, nonprofits, foundations, and government leaders who are committed to reducing food waste in the United States. And it's the first ever national economic study and action plan that's driven by multi-stakeholder groups that are committed to tackling food waste at scale. So I have the website up on the screen. I'm not going to go through all the solutions that ReFed presented. This is just highlighting some that kind of align with the work that our commission does, as well as align with some of the work in our community. So the first is home, community, and commercial composting. So for those who have served on the commission for a while, you might be aware that we already have blueprints that are created related to home composting and commercial composting, and those have been discussed at meetings, and those blueprints exist for jurisdictions to utilize. When we look at home composting in our community, some resources that already exist are from organizations like River Keepers and Cass and Clay County Soil Conservation District. They're already offering classes to teach individuals how to compost at home, and you can build your own compost tumbler. And then when we get to the commercial composting level, last commission meeting in September, we heard from Clay County Solid Waste about some of the plans that they're working on to explore developing an anaerobic digester that can accept food waste. And then we've also heard on the Fargo side, knowing that our Fargo landfill actually captures methane and converts that into electricity. So there isn't as much interest in a commercial composting facility on the North Dakota side because that methane is already being captured, and the food waste that goes into those landfills is actually necessary to produce the methane. So another possible solution from a local government perspective is food donation transportation. This is highlighted in the snapshot document that you have in your packets. But the Great Plains Food Bank, and Nancy could speak more to this, has 3 trucks that go out Monday through Friday throughout Fargo-Moorhead, and they already pick up perishable items that would otherwise go to waste. They pick up from locations like Hornbacher's, Cashwise, Target, Walmart, and others, and they deliver that food directly to our local food pantries like Dorothy Day, New Life Center, and the Salvation Army. So from a local government perspective, what some jurisdictions do is explore if their current food transportation services are sufficient, and if not, allocate more local resources to support additional transportation to capture excess food and get it to our local food pantries. Another solution for local government is waste tracking. So this is kind of what Concordia was talking about at our last meeting when they were sharing information from their plate waste study. So a couple times a year, Concordia measures the amount of food waste that their students are generating in the dining hall and then tracks that over time. So there's a number of different ways in which food service operations can do this. There's menu planning software programs that exist. A commonly known one in the food service world is something called LeanPath that helps food service operations to forecast, to track their waste, and to make goals to reduce waste. From a local government perspective, what some jurisdictions are able to do is they subsidize the cost of those programs to make them more easily available to the food service operations in their community. And then they provide training to food service staff, similar to what you would see with like Serve Safe classes or food safety classes that are offered by public health. They incorporate a food waste education component to our food service workforce. And the last 2 on this for key government solution are consumer education campaigns and then a multi-city jurisdiction food waste reduction goals. And for the purposes of our discussion today, I'd like to focus on these 2 solutions. Firstly, because they are both upstream approaches and they kind of tie into what was mentioned before with that the majority of food waste happens at the consumer level. And there are also some possibilities of things that we can already tie into with these efforts that exist in our community. So the first is consumer education campaigns. So the Ad Council and Natural Resource Defense Council have been leading a public service campaign called Save the Food, which is to combat food waste at the consumer level by raising awareness to change behavior. And this multi-year campaign has made its way to Fargo in the form of billboards, which are scattered across our community. You've likely seen them. Some are a milk carton that has the best if used by date on it, trying to bring more awareness to the issue of food waste. So I have a handout that I would like to pass out now. So if you can take one of these and pass it down. So what Save the Food has done is that in addition to creating this public awareness campaign, they have also provided action tactics that can be taken by cities and counties to leverage the work that they're already doing in the community. So they'll offer technical support and materials for communities that would like to leverage the billboards that they've already put in place and to invest in additional campaign tactics, including outdoor ads, websites, social media, print, TV, radio, etc. So that handout really nicely walks through what local communities can do to capitalize on some of the work that's already being done in the community. And then further, what you can do is if a community decides that they would like to capitalize on this educational campaign, the Ad Council can do pre and post surveys in the community to measure consumer awareness and changes in behavior. So we could directly see what this additional effort has done to change consumers' understanding of the food waste issue and actions that they can personally take. So all that information is on that handout. And then the second potential option that I'd like to propose today for local jurisdictions is to create a community food waste reduction goal. So in September of 2015, the USDA and Environmental Protection Agency announced the U.S.'s first ever food waste and food loss reduction goal, calling for a 50% reduction by 2030. Part of that is encouraging corporations to sign on to become food waste champions or 2030 champions. So a number of major companies have already signed on, to name a few, Campbell Soup, Kellogg's, and Walmart. But while these companies' commitments are important, we know that the majority of food waste is not happening in those places. It's happening at the consumer level and more in our restaurants and food retailers that exist in our communities. So what can happen is that local communities can encourage their businesses, organizations, and households to make pledges by making a city, county, or multi-jurisdiction pledge to reduce food waste. So the USDA and EPA have a form that businesses and organizations to complete that basically asks them if they are willing to commit to reduce food waste and lay out some strategies. And then from an individual perspective, there are tons of resources that exist to encourage individuals and households to make food waste reduction. A handout that I'm going to pass out is from an organization called Food Too Good to Waste. And what this does is lays out a 6-week plan for households to measure their food waste, implement strategies, and then remeasure their food waste again. So this was a lot of information, kind of fast and furious, but what we wanted to do today was present some of these potential strategies that exist from other communities or that have been recommended by different collaborations nationally, and discuss as a commission based on these strategies, based on the strategies that were laid out in our snapshot, or other things that you think would be really impactful to address food waste. What is one thing that our group can do to help to support food waste reduction in Cass and Clay counties? And so handout 2B in your packets is kind of a summary of some of this information that was discussed. And we'd like you to chat with the person next to you about some of these strategies that were laid out and what you feel would be important actions that we can take as a commission and the Cass Clay Food Partners. So I think we have about 10-15 minutes. So if you can chat with the person next to you and come up with, you can lay out as many strategies as we'd like, but we'd like you to, we're going to go around and share what we've come up with. So if you can come up with one that you'd like to share with the group, that would be awesome. So take 10 minutes and chat with the group. And I also have handouts for our audience, and we would love for you to participate as well. So go ahead and discuss amongst yourselves.
Okay.
All right.
Should we read through this first?
Sure.
and
I think I'm with you.
All right, let's wrap up our discussion and share some of the ideas. Would anyone be willing to start, and we'll just go around the table? Nancy's ready? All right.
Like Megan was saying, we have a food recovery program that we do, and we have three trucks that drive around, but there's a whole lot more food we could be rescuing if we had more resources to do it. We could utilize an entire extra truck and driver to be able to rescue instead of picking up from 3 days a week. We went from a 3-day-a-week pickup to a 5-day-a-week pickup at one of our local Walmarts, and it was an additional 2,000 pounds, like every 2 weeks we were able to pick up just from that one store. So we know that we can get more. So my idea that came from it, was some funding that would come out, and if funding for a new truck and transportation to be able to get that food, and put some of these ads on it from the Save the Food would be wonderful. It could be kind of your driving little billboard for what that looks like, and so I think that would be wonderful. And to get any sort of funding for transportation would be huge.
Thank you. Which way would we like to go? Rory and Jenny? Is that all right?
Sure. So we had a couple of ideas. One was that we already have environmental service staff that comes out to license commercial food retailers, and that with a little bit of preparation and education, they may be in a position to provide some simple education on things that our commercial food industry could possibly apply. It seems like that would be a simple, we already have them going out, and it would be a matter of trying to find out maybe what was in it for the food organization. So that's one. The other idea is that Extension on both sides of the river already do a program called Smarter Lunchrooms. They work with schools, and it's about getting kids to eat healthy foods, but the positive side effect of that is it can reduce waste. And so piggybacking on that, finding a way to shine the light on that program maybe even a little bit more.
Thank you.
Yeah, and Arlen and I agree that focusing on that education is really important, especially the younger generation when we're talking about, something like a public campaign that takes a long time. And we thought the power of communicating with dollars and cents, and really, I know this is something that Megan does, and really reinforcing that connection that throwing away food is throwing away money. And then we did talk a little bit about, what would it look like to do food waste auditing or to do some goal setting at the government level, but we felt the logistics and the perception of something like that could be problematic in our community, so we stuck more at that kind of education level.
Thank you.
Well, we talked a lot about how we have the spokes but not the full wheel for kind of sending this message out there. The waste, like measuring and capturing your waste too, we thought maybe the choir might participate in that, but maybe you could do like a challenge and maybe have members of the media or folks that wouldn't traditionally opt in for something like that could also then share some of the results, and also piggybacking on that dollar thing, how that is really powerful, that $500+ a month being thrown out really is quite moving for people, I think, to understand.
Kayla and Jim? And Margie?
Where'd that baby?
I think these babies should be a couple. They're just perfect for each other. Oh, my gosh. We talked about the educational component, too, and just thought it would be really fun to have elementary schools maybe have a competition and then start that dialogue with them about this, and then have a competition to see who can achieve the most gain in terms of not having food waste. And then you could do all the nutrition and everything in conjunction with that. Other sort of small groups would be neighborhood associations as well. We're out in Rose Creek, and they're always telling us what to do out there. So I figure this could be a way where it could be a really productive thing. And then rather than telling you can't park something in the driveway, we can say you could put a compost thing in your backyard. I think that would be much less punitive and more neighborly. So I think, and there are lots of neighborhood organizations that are around that we could really, I think, tap into. The other thing that Jim was talking about too, we were talking about film, because I always go back to that in my core, but it would be public access and local access. Put some of these shorter films like Kids Menu or Just Eat It, I think is only a 40-minute kind of film. We could promote that and then put that on local access kinds of things. It's really a wonderful way within a very short period of time to convey a message, and then have some kind of strategy for a community dialogue after that. But I think the younger, and we agreed here in our group that the younger you get the behaviors initiated and instilled, the better off you're going to be. So I think those elementary schools.
Thank you.
All right, Chelsea will chime in if I forget something, but we focused on the education part of it as well. I think it's been discussed several times here, but I don't think the general public understands that this is a problem until they do, and I think you have to start at the younger age. Kind of like I think we go back to our regular recycling program. It's been very successful in West Fargo and Horace and other cities, but a lot of that is driven by the younger kids and kids even back in the school. So I think we have to target that. Certainly the municipalities can support education efforts through, like Margie just mentioned, through newsletters or website links or our local access channels, stuff like that. We can do that. But the other thing, as far as, hoping the municipalities will get involved as far as collection and recycling of food products, well, like in the case of West Fargo and Horace, is we don't have our own municipal sanitation systems. We utilize Fargo. Our recycling is done by Waste Management and shipped to the cities, so that's outside of our control. We utilize Fargo, so, certainly if Fargo was going to accept that, we may be able to incorporate some of those things in. But I think you have to start at the ground level and educate people before anything can happen, so.
Thank you.
And I was just thinking too that, a lot of the southern states, they're able to have gardening involved, activities during the school year, but we don't have that ability. But there is a lot of park board activities for the kids, and maybe a food activity that they could sign up for and have a garden with the kids in the summertime would be.
Thank you.
So we were on the education side also, but we were thinking as a commission, maybe we could encourage all the jurisdictions to come together and have a Food Awareness Day campaign and, put it all out in their utility bills, get some proclamations, and then again, tie that to the dollar and cents. So if you're throwing about a half gallon milk away, that's 50 cents. So actually, do the dollar and cents, but make it a Public Awareness Day, and as a commission, we can encourage all the jurisdictions to do that.
Deb and Adam?
Okay, we also looked at education, just looking at the impact of young people, both the really young ones, but also our high school ones, just like what's happening at Fargo South, where they're looking at waste, looking at share tables that can be used within the tables or within the schools to, instead of having that carton of milk just thrown, it's put out on a table and could be shared. And then this is hunting season. So I'm looking at, do all hunters use all of their product, or could they be processing it and have it donated? As apple trees were emptied, were all those apples be used, or could we get gleaners that would come and distribute those apples to other locations?
I believe that there have been programs over the years by deer hunters specifically too. And I don't know if they're active now or who organized that to begin with, maybe.
It's Sportsmen Against Hunger.
Yeah, Sportsmen Against Hunger. And they're still active?
As far as I know, they are, yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for sharing. We've tried to capture everything that was discussed today. It sounds like youth and education is a big theme. So we'll continue to visit about this as a steering committee and hopefully come up with some ideas that we can work on as a Cass Clay Food Partners. Yeah, Barb. Sure.
I was thinking, I know we have little free gardens all over the place, but what if we had something like little free pantries, but at each store, grocery store, corner store, it could be a store that doesn't even sell food. It could just be a place where people, no judgment, could be outside the building, you just put extra food in there, or people bring, instead of like going just to the food pantry, or people just going to that store, but like a place inside Hornbachers where maybe even it's within the front entry, so that it's not like this big judgmental, you're taking all these cheap groceries kind of thing, but like, so that in each location, spread throughout the community, we also have these, maybe of milk, and there could be like, just things like that in there. So people could bring things like, oh my gosh, I bought this creamer, because I was gonna have a party with Jemima, and we didn't have our party, now I have all this creamer. So I could bring my creamer there, because sometimes you don't know where to bring it, and I go to the grocery store often. So maybe places like that, reducing food waste, people kind of, I know that could be interesting with things that are perishable, but, just the basic majority of it would be that there's a place at the store, and even non-food stores that would carry foods that people could take from.
Thank you. Did anyone else in the audience, I apologize for not asking you guys to share, did anyone else have any strategies or ideas you'd like to share? Yes.
I think we need to remember to work with outlying communities, our neighbors. Sometimes we focus really heavily on Fargo Moorhead's food recovery system and feeding our community, and we might forget Castleton, we might forget Carroll. There's certain communities right outside of our area, and I think making a way to transport stuff we can't use to them is essential.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, well, the snapshot that is in your packets is posted on the Cass Clay Food Partners website, so we'll keep that resource there so we're aware of the different efforts that are happening in our community, and we'll continue to discuss this as a commission, but thank you all for sharing all these great ideas today.
Thank you, Megan. Next, we are down to item number 4 on the agenda. Adam.
All right. Just want to give an update about the Metro Food Plan. At our last meeting, we talked a little bit about the public input that we had gathered throughout the summer. We had 5 different public input events from June to August, and we had received about over 150 different responses to what community would like to see with regard to changes in the food system in the area over the next 5 to 10 years. In that time, the last couple of months, steering committee has been working on the body of the Metro Food Plan, looking at some of the indicators and trends that we would like to incorporate, that we'd like to follow past the implementation of this plan, and also starting to look more at some of the some of the objectives and policies that could relate to the goals and values that we have developed as part of the Cass Clay Food Partners. We were hoping to have a little bit more information to share at this meeting. It was our goal to have a rough draft of this plan for you to review. We aren't quite there yet, so we will try to have that here in our meeting in January, but we'll continue to plug along on the plan, and we'll have more information.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Adam? Thanks, Adam, appreciate it.
I have one question, sorry.
Sure.
Thank you. I just wanted to follow up and make sure that when the food plan is ready to roll, that you're going to all the municipalities and presenting. As there's new members rotating in the new year?
We would definitely present it to City of Fargo and Clay County, just the entities responsible for public health. That was kind of our initial thought, but after your suggestion, I would be open to sending it to all the jurisdictions. I guess that would be a good idea, so that they understand the work that we're doing and kind of give an update with all the commissioners' work here as well. So,
thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Comments? Okay. Moving on, number 5, blueprint updates. Kim, we got a couple, this is action items. couple changes coming up?
Yeah. Well, as most of you are aware, the Food Commission has developed and approved a number of different blueprints over the years since the inception in 2015. And as time goes on, some of the documents that have been developed early on need to be updated because of changes in zoning and ordinances in some of the local jurisdictions over the last few years. So the two that we wanted to talk about today are the urban agriculture-related ones, the backyard chickens and the beekeeping document. And so if we start with the chickens, attachment 3 in your packet has the pages that will be involved with some of the updates. In red is what is currently in there, and that's the wording that needs to be changed. And then in green are the suggested proposed changes to change that wording to. So if you look at page 1 in attachment 3, Fargo is in 2017 updated their ordinance to allow chicken keeping in residential areas. So the wording in red is no longer relevant and needs to be replaced. And we can replace it with the part in green. And then also added on there is a link to the website where there's more additional information on how you can access those changes and get the permit and so forth. So that's the first change. Then on page 4, we just moved up the NDSU Veterinarian Diagnostic Lab up underneath the chart where it was originally supposed to be anyway. That was just a typo from before. And then an update on my email address, and then putting in the case study that was developed after the backyard chicken keeping ordinance went through in Fargo. There's a direct link to that, and then adding the University of Minnesota Extension website on there as a resource because it's got a lot of very helpful information on backyard chicken keeping. So those are the proposed changes in there. I don't know if anybody has any questions on those at all. We'll change it to the green writing and take out the old language.
Is there any questions? Or is there a motion?
I move that we accept the changes in green.
Is there a second?
A second.
Second by Nancy. Discussion. Now is the time to discuss. Bring up your questions. Discussion. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Oh, we do.
Just a question about how you got to the number of chickens that it's 4.
A lot of research. We took a look at what different communities were doing, and it seemed to be 4 was kind of the number, and that's what we presented to the Fargo City Commission, and they were in agreement with that. Anywhere between 4 to 6 in some of the local residential areas is what seems to be a common number with that.
Okay, thank you. Further discussion, questions? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Kim. And next?
And the second one is the beekeeping blueprint. So if you look at attachment 4, on the second page there, on it's table 1, summary of beekeeping approval in local jurisdictions. And if you notice there, pretty much it's not addressed in any of the local jurisdictions. And when we first put this together in 2015, we had called around to some of the different jurisdictions, asked what not addressed means. And at the time, some of them said, well, not addressed means then it's not allowed. But recently, the bees have come up again in Fargo. And depending on which different city department you asked, some were saying, yes, it's allowed, no, it's not, because it's not addressed. And the city attorney at the time, back in 2015, said it's not addressed, it's not allowed. But now the current attorney said, well, it's not addressed, so it is allowed. So I guess we just kind of wanted to throw it out to you guys as to what to put in there to update this. Do you know in each of your jurisdictions if not addressed means not allowed, or it is allowed? And if that's the case, do we list them out individually, like Fargo says this, West Fargo says this, Moorhead says this? Or do we just replace what's in red there from before with just a statement about contacting your legal authority in each jurisdiction to clarify zoning regulations?
Well, I think that seems a lot cleaner to me, to do it that way.
Okay. Because over time, and it kind of just depends on who has the final say in each jurisdiction as to what is allowed and what's not.
Right, and I guess from Clay County's perspective, it's always been of the thought if it's not addressed, it's not allowed. I guess that's kind of the standard in terms of planning and zoning departments usually. I guess my other thought is that in terms of legal advice, you don't like the opinion, you go to another lawyer. I mean, so, I mean, I feel more comfortable with, for Clay County's, not addressed means not allowed. Fargo.
Okay.
I think each jurisdiction is different. Probably bad analogy, but U-turns. I go back to my copying days, okay? You come to an intersection and it says U-turn permitted. You can do it, right? You come to an intersection that's open and there's no sign there. A lot of people think you can do it. Some cities say, no, you can't. It's only where it's permitted. And other cities, yeah, it's open. There wasn't a sign saying, no U-turn, go ahead. So each city, each area is a little bit different. And I think we need to go back and just say, contact, this is where you ask and what the rules are. Okay? My U-turn deal is done. Further discussion?
So
Is there-
are different jurisdictions have different entities that would be appropriate to contact? So do we, is it cleaner to just leave it as contact legal authorities? Because we had a discussion as a steering committee, should we provide some direction for folks in terms of who they should contact for that clarification at the different jurisdiction level?
My suggestion, and Mike maybe wants to chime in here, I think that it's good to point out, I mean, if I had no idea who do you contact, and I wouldn't done this with either, but maybe you would say, please contact your city or county administrator's office. Not that you have to talk to that administrator, but if they get some of these questions, it's usually the clerical people that answer the phones that say, oh, this is what you need. I can tell you where to go, you know, or what who to contact. Mike, did you have a different idea?
Yeah, I'd concur with that, but in West Fargo, it'd be planning department, planning.
Planning would be good. Yeah.
They'll talk to legal if there's any question. You could contact the administrator, but, you know.
No, I think planning is better than
They
administrator
get kind
even.
of overloaded at the
Yeah.
administration level.
Yeah.
So would you substitute word planning for legal, you think? That's where
Legal
we're
for
going?
planning.
Contact planning authority in each jurisdiction.
Just
Planning
contact
and
each jurisdiction, and, because it might vary from jurisdiction too.
Okay.
Well, that's even cleaner.
Whoever the
Yeah.
permitting authority is, I mean, it's,
Yeah, and it may vary. I know in West
Well-
Fargo, you contact planning, they have overlying zoning ordinances of their own.
So you're saying contact each jurisdiction?
Yeah, I would just say each jurisdiction, and if not legal, you don't want to contact the city or county
That
attorney
whacks
right
it way
away.
down.
It makes it easier to write it that way. It makes it more vague for somebody who's trying to get some guidance as to what they need to do.
and also our attorney's office, if you haven't contacted the planning and zoning first, they're probably not gonna, they're just gonna say call planning and zoning. They're not gonna take up something that's not been permitted already.
Okay, further discussion?
So I'm hearing putting the word planning or permitting, contact planning/permitting authority in each jurisdiction.
Well, at least that gives you a direction, otherwise they have no,
Somewhere to start.
I can tell you they're gonna call the police department. Okay, any discussion, questions, or a motion?
I'll make one.
Okay, moved for the changes and putting in planning and permitting, okay? Second? Okay, thank you, Mike. Discussion. 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 Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much, Kim. Appreciate it. We are down to item number 6, which is public comment opportunity. And I believe we do have some public comment, so I open it up to the public, and one at a time, if you would come up. When you come up, please introduce yourself, and thank you for being here today.
My name's Verna Craigness, and I'm working at this point as conference coordinator for Northern Plains Sustainable Ag. How many people have heard about this organization before today? A few. That's great. Wonderful. So it's a 40-year-old membership organization. That makes it actually one of the oldest promoting sustainable ag in the region. And the organization has members in North Dakota, South Dakota, Montana, Iowa, Nebraska, Minnesota, and actually a few from around the country and one from Europe. So it's been very exciting to get involved in the last little over a month to help the final organizing of a great conference that's coming up in Fargo the end of January. It's going to start, as Margie has already mentioned, with a pre-conference activity, filming, film showing, and panel discussion following on food waste, which is very timely to join in with the work that's being done. And it is a film that does feature Dan Barber, who is one of the featured speakers for the conference. And so we thought this would be a great way to get continued community discussion ahead of our conference, and hopefully entice even a few more people to sign up at that point. Then the conference itself has a pre-conference schedule on Thursday afternoon with 4 presenters. Glenn Rappenberg from Soilworks LLC in South Dakota will do something called Boots in the Dirt. We'll have Principles and Practices of Biodynamic Agriculture by Stefan and Rachel Schneider from Hawthorne Valley Farm in Harlemville, New York, and they are the other keynote speakers for the conference. North Dakota SARE is leading a workshop that is an introduction to organic ag, and one of the panels will be, if I were to start over in organic ag, where would I start? What are some things I would never do again? And then lastly, we'll have low-cost methods for small-scale regenerative agriculture with Dr. Apachanda Thamaya from Fairfield, Iowa. And this workshop will be in Hindi, and we'll provide translation into English. Dr. Thamaya was here about a year ago and had a very exciting workshop with members of the Bhutanese community. And so I was very happy to figure out a way to bring him back, to be able to continue to provide some resources to those members of our community that are very, very interested in finding ways to get involved in farming. And then the conference itself, that evening, another open to the public event, Agriculture, a taste of local art, food, and drink. And there'll be a presentation that evening about agriculture by Dana DeVal with the Arts Partnership. And then we have 2 days of exciting workshops. And I'm taking so much time because, it'll be already close to the workshop when you meet again. I do have brochures I'm going to hand around. I've started to say informally that this workshop is really organized with this sort of mood of whoever you are, wherever you are on the path to greater sustainability. You are welcome here. This organization was started in 1979 by a group of farmers who at that point were asking questions: could they get involved in more natural farming techniques? Could they find a way to support each other and learn from each other about how to move away from some of the chemical agriculture and so on? And this has been an amazing support group. I actually remember as a farmer in the early 90s being invited to make a presentation on community-supported agriculture at their conference. It's been held for a number of years, I've lost track of how many, in Aberdeen, South Dakota, and the conference ran out of room. You literally, people would book their room for the next year's conference as they were paying the bill for that one. And so they started making the announcement, we're going to move to a bigger venue, because they also would have a waiting list of sponsors. So this is a group that has been a community of resources to each other, and very interested in moving to this new location, but also recognizing this is a time when people are really raising questions in their mind about, is the kind of agriculture I've been practicing the path that I can keep doing? Because of the impact in the farming community of the tariffs, because of multiple years of below cost prices in farming for farmers. Perhaps this is a moment when people could say, you know, maybe I should look at some other options. So this is a place where those questions could be asked, and people could start to find others that would be supportive of them as they start to see what changes might I want to make to move in a slightly different direction. So some of these wide-ranging topics might include, I started with 1 cow and a $15 milk pail, and I now have a profitable 10-cow microdairy. Now that image is really powerful in this day when we have had so many stories in the press about dairy farmers and family farms that have needed to sell their herds and to go out of business. So there's going to be just many, many different kinds of examples given, and an opportunity in the context of both the workshops and lots of time with each other for people to find a community of support on the topic of sustainable ag. So now you've had lots of information. I do have a few copies, hard copies of the most recent newsletter. I could send it to you online if you want to reach me. The other bit of news, shortly after I started, we found we needed to move the office out of Lemoore, North Dakota, where it's been for multiple years. And so Northern Plains Sustainable Ag now has an office in Moorhead.
Thank you very much. Any questions, comments? Okay. Is there anybody else from the audience that would like to come on up?
Good morning. I'm Barb Villela, and I spoke at our last commission meeting. I'm with the Prairie Roots Community Fund, which is a nonprofit organization, that a 503B organization that was started by the co-op to reduce food insecurity in our closest neighborhood adjoining to the co-op, which is USDA Food Desert. Happy to report that we already have 2 health and wellness classes under our belt so far, and we had participation, just about 10 people each class, and we even had little ones that got to stay behind with me, and we worked on some different fun activities while the parents went and learned blood pressure, and then foods that could help them with blood pressure instead of pharmaceutical type interventions. Then our next one was blood sugar. So we even had, a little girl, she pricked her finger and she found out what that good number was. And then we talked about, things that can affect blood sugar, like stress and things like that. A lot of people are thinking, well, I don't eat a lot of sugar. why is my blood sugar high? And we're able to, with Cass County Public Health, we had a nurse who's actually assigned to the Madison School District. She offered her services to us to help come in, answer questions, and kind of be that medical professional. We've gotten a lot of really awesome partnerships so far built. We've already met with the city and the Fargo Parks to build our community garden projects, and we're almost at a yes. I think it's a yes. But we're almost at a yes with our Madison Garden project, which will be a community garden that will be built on the Madison property, as well as people in the neighborhood that want community garden projects, such as in their backyards. Let's say Joan wants to grow tomatoes, Charles wants to grow cucumbers, and Emily wants squash. So then the neighbors aren't all growing the same things, and we can maybe kind of do some sort of system where we exchange and then just build that food access throughout that neighborhood. So lots of awesome progress taking place there. We also attended the summit that Megan Myrdal and all those great organizations attended. We even took a little trip to Jamestown for a food partners meeting. We're just doing a lot of engagement. And so I just wanted to say hello and just update you on where we're at. And we're still moving forward. So we'll have community gardens, we'll have education starting in March, actually. Family Wellness is partnering with us also. And we get to go into every single 4th and 5th grade classroom at Madison, and we get to extend our education on health and wellness. So it's not just talking the talk, we're actually showing people how to do that. And walk if you need with a scooter.
Thank you. Questions? Comments? Questions? Thank you very much. Anybody else? Yes, sir. Come on up. Welcome.
Welcome. Good job, and I appreciate just a quick moment. In fact, I don't have too many action items for you to accomplish, but one of the things, my name is Travis Hoffman. I serve as NDSU Sheep Extension Specialist for Minnesota and North Dakota. And so, in fact, a couple of things that I continue to work on that may be potentially at some point align is continuing where we're at relative to just local slaughter and harvest facilities, and at least providing that portion. Is I'm hoping that, as you talked about the 40% that may be put into the food waste, I'm hoping that at least 60% of it gets consumed, all right? And I'm working at least on that side from the protein standpoint, from beef, pork, sheep, and goats. And so working with different producers, because particularly, and I guess one of the things that I would keep in your mind, and again, this isn't exactly where you're at, but a point of clarification, Kim. So right now, you can get a permit for up to 4 chickens? Mm-hmm. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay.
In the city of Fargo.
And before this, it was, or was there a number on it?
Yes, it was, well, there was conflicting things in the codes, but it was agriculture zones only, and now it's residential as well.
Sure.
You can get a permit.
Okay, and so I'm just, again, wanting to stay involved and interested in learning from that standpoint, and hopefully, as you think about it from a food commission, as I'm in the animal sciences department, is that we're at least, as a group, providing those resources to those people that are getting their permitted chickens, because just because you have 4 chickens doesn't mean that you have 4 healthy chickens, or that you know how to treat those 4 healthy chickens. And from a food commission standpoint, that we keep in mind, no matter if it was the bees or the chickens, or since I don't even understand yet if it's not in there that I can have a sheep in my backyard, or if it isn't in there, then I can't. Anyway, that's your guys' discussion. But at least as long as we have that formal access from a permitting standpoint, that we're providing those resources so that everybody can assist those people from a food standpoint, and they don't all come to Noel or myself or something and identify how they're going to have chickens in their production system. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Comments? Anybody else from the audience? Yes.
Hello, my name's Jemima Hepner. I'm a mom here in Fargo-Moorhead. I'm recently in Becker County, so I'm coming back to Moorhead. I drive a limousine, and we use this limousine to bring people to the food shelves who otherwise wouldn't have access to food. And I've also used it to pick up food donations, either from businesses, or if someone's moving, we'll come and we'll load up all the stuff that they don't want to take with them. My children and I started something called FM Pay It Forward, or Fargo-Moorhead Community Resources, and it's the places in town where people can go get help. And this year we produced a food shelf only brochure so that not only our community knows where they can bring those extra produce from their garden, but the people in need without a referral are able to go to any of these locations and pick up that food that would otherwise be wasted. Our produce, a lot of it comes from the Daily Bread from Great Plains Food Bank, and so that's an awesome resource. We need to make sure that continues to run good. And so we like to support them in that way. We're looking forward to this year and networking more with people who are doing this wonderful work. Thank you.
Thank you for what you do. Questions, comments? Anybody else from the audience? Okay, we are at item number 7 on our agenda, Steering Committee Roundtable. Now is the time. Going around, do you have anything? Yes, Mike.
One question or comment, looking at the blueprints, I would suggest or recommend that we look at adding Horace as a jurisdiction as far as the outline of the regulations. In my opinion, Horace is on the doorstep of rapid expansion, and I think it would be good to
Absolutely.
include them.
Any other comments or?
Well, I also had a comment about thinking about the blueprints, and I appreciate Rory's comment during the discussion about, we're not really easing the confusion of people by directing them toward the planning authority or the legal authority. I fear that that's kind of sending people down a rabbit hole, pun intended. So another way for us and for our local government entities to simplify or clarify would be to actually adopt ordinances around beekeeping, even if it's to say it's not allowed here. But just something to think about as we're continuing our food policy work together, that would be a different way to address the issue of clarifying for people what the policies are. So, thanks.
Okay, comments?
I have something.
Okay.
It's a certificate of appreciation to Arland for being with us with the Food Commission since the inception in March of 2015.
Thank
So
you.
we appreciate your service and.
Thank you very much.
There you go.
Well, thank you, everybody, and it's truly been an honor and a privilege and a great learning experience. I grew up on a farm, but it's been many, many years ago, and glad to see that agriculture is more moving into the city and so forth. So, thank you. It has been really an interesting time, and your next chairman, I believe, is going to be Mike. I think you're the vice, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So he's more than willing. It'll just take him a few weeks and he'll be right in there, But I retire on December 3rd, is my last commission meeting, so this will be my last venture with you folks. But it's been a privilege and an honor to meet you and to work with each of you. We have any other comments or any other business? We're getting close to the end here, and I have another meeting in 10 minutes. Under action steps, next First Fridays, Theater B in Moorhead, December 7th. Okay.
We'll be discussing the life of chefs. So we have 3 chefs in our community who will be sharing their insights on what it's like to do that type of work in the Fargo-Moorhead area.
Okay, great. That might be pretty interesting, really. Yeah. Next commission meeting, January 9th. Mike, put that on your calendar. Any further business? Thank you to the new members here. Appreciate you being here and participating. Thanks to all the members for participating, and especially to our audience for taking time out of your day and coming here and participating. So with that, we need a motion to adjourn. We got one? Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
A low rumble. Motion carries.